Great, good. Okay, thank you. All right. I'm going to dive back in on this topic, and I'm a little behind schedule, so I'm not going to beat this to death, but I do want to talk about the obligated member entity exemption. We talked about fonts exemption right before the break, the obligated member entity or OME exemption. So, you know, our theme that we talked about right before the break is that if you're willing to forego state law limited liability, then the state is not going to make you pay the tax. Okay. So the way that the way this works is if you have a general partnership, it's not subject to the tax. You don't need an exemption, it's just simply not subject to the tax. And I will tell you that until these state tax laws changed and extended F&E tax to LLCs, we did very, very few general partnerships. All right? The general partnerships we saw were mostly what I would call accidental general partnerships of the kind I talked about earlier, where folks get together to do business and don't really formalize anything, and you know, de facto they've got a general partnership. The number of times where people actually sat down and formed a real live general partnership and had a general partnership agreement were relatively infrequent before this became an issue. Now in the state of Tennessee, you see lots of general partnerships that own real estate, all right, because they're not subject to the F&E tax. You can also obtain this exemption with an LLC or a limited partnership, all right? And it seems a little counterintuitive, but the way you get it is if all the members of the LLC elect to be personally liable, just as if they were general partners, or if all the limited partners elect to be liable just as if they were general partners, and there's some formal paperwork you have to do on that, then the entity is exempt, all right? And you might say, well, why actually go to the trouble of having an LLC if everybody's going to elect to be liable? And there are some technical reasons why you might prefer an LLC to a general partnership even under those circumstances. And I'll talk a little bit about planning opportunities with that as well. But this is sort of a common type of exemption that we frequently see in this area. So if you do this, if you make the OME exemption election, everybody's liable just like a general partner. Now, let me talk about how we sort of work around this sometimes. And someone asked me the question, they said, well, if you do that, you just buy lots of insurance. And that is certainly, if you're going to own real estate through a general partnership or through an entity that's made one of these elections, you certainly want to have plenty of general liability insurance to cover sort of slip and fall type stuff. Of course, that's good for sort of accident liability, like tort liability, like somebody slips and gets hurt. But another big source of liability is contract liability, all right, which means your exposure under leases. Insurance isn't going to protect you against most of that kind of exposure. Your insurance under loan documents, okay? You go out and borrow money. If you borrow money as a general partnership, all the general partners are jointly and severally liable, all right? So sometimes when we use this, if we're going to use a general partnership that in order to avoid F&E tax, in the contracts, whether leases or loan documents or other contracts it may sign, we will include exculpatory provisions that say, notwithstanding the fact that the borrower under this loan is a general partnership, the bank acknowledges that neither of the general partners are going to have any personal liability for this loan, except to the extent expressly set forth in the separate guarantee that they're signing to us, okay? And so, you know, it would be common that the owners would, you know, John, I can see you nodding your head back there. It'd be common that the owners would guarantee the loan, but sometimes they might have pro rata guarantees where, you know, if we got, Scott and I are doing a deal and it's 50-50, I'll guarantee half the loan and he'll guarantee half the loan. We can still arrive at the result that we desire, which is we're not fully personally liable for the entire loan. We're only liable for our 1/2 shares of the loan under the guarantee by including these sorts of exculpatory provisions in our loan documents. All right. And again, you want to have thorough insurance.